Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. These days, we all wonder about the millennial generation, and we wonder whether they are going to be responsible, whether they are going to do what's needed to take care of us as we age. Well, you don't have to worry about that, because I have a person from the millennial generation right here with me in the studio today to talk about all of the social work that he's doing while being a student and an aspiring lawyer. The person here is also a Danbury native, and he's going to talk about his recent visit to the White House. So please join me in welcoming Sai Santosh Kumar Kolluru. Hi, Sai.
Hey, Usha.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
You are an engineer. You have a degree in mechanical engineering.
Yes.
From Case Western Reserve
Yes.
University. And then you are also a patent agent at this point,
Yeah.
right?
Currently.
And you're an aspiring law student. Mm-hmm. You have admission into which college?
Currently to Ohio Northern, out in Ohio. But I am planning on taking the LSAT again and trying to see where else I get in. So.
Something closer to home, I believe.
Something closer to home, yeah.
So you went to school all the way from elementary school to high school.
That's right.
In Danbury.
Yep. I went to Haystown Elementary School, went to Broadview Middle School, and Danbury High School.
And then you went off to Case Western.
Case Western, Cleveland.
But then you're back here. When did you intern at the White House?
So in the summer of 2011, I had the very, very fortunate opportunity to intern in the Office of Public Engagement, which is one of the 25 offices under the President. And I was tasked with working with the faith community and the social safety net group. How
long was this internship?
It was about 4 months, starting in May and ending in August. And it was a group of 120 other interns.
From all over the nation?
From all over the nation.
I suppose.
That's right.
How did you get into the program?
So it's interesting. I did not have any political connections or any connections to campaigns or anything like that. I actually worked with Bhutanese refugees in Cleveland, Ohio, starting my freshman year in college.
Oh, I see.
And these are the first time these Hindu refugees, about 110,000 of them, were basically wiped off the map of the Constitution of Bhutan when it was created by a new king that came into power. So the United States decided, just happened to be during the time that I was a freshman, to take 60,000 of those 110,000 refugees. And they happened to be in my backyard of Cleveland.
So they came, we gave them asylum?
We gave them asylum.
Political refugees? As
political refugees. They were escaping religious persecution because they were Hindus, and the king at the time wanted to make Bhutan a fundamentally Buddhist country.
I see.
And so I met a professor who was in the forefront of their resettlement, and I decided to get involved.
In the White House itself, as an intern, what was your experience? Did you get to meet the president at that time?
Well, my experience was incredible. As an intern, you pretty much do everything in the Office of Public Engagement, from drafting memos to organizing receptions. I did have a chance to, I guess, interact with the president, and it was just an incredible experience. The whole interaction was about how we're working with a group of constituents, and how can we help the senior officials address certain issues that the constituents are facing. So
was it all social related issues?
Yes, like I said, my constituencies were all faith-based groups. So
I see, religious
groups. So I was dealing, as an office, we were dealing with Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, Hindu Americans, and all other groups, and the concerns that they had as to what the administration was doing about certain issues at home and abroad.
When you went there, were you given to understand that this was the first time, or the presidents have always had such groups over at the White House?
It's interesting. I believe that this administration was specifically the one office that opened up a lot of doors to a lot of different ethnic religious communities. It really depends on the president's initiatives and his policies as to how much outreach he wants to do. I personally believe that this is as open as a president was with trying to reach every single community and every single demographic. And I had the honor to be in the forefront of that, organizing briefings, meeting with these people, and arranging the contact between senior officials and them.
Now tell us how that led to what you're doing now.
Sure.
In terms of this kind of a social aspect, this kind of a religious aspect to bringing some kind of social justice.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was an engineer, but engineering was something that it was challenging, but it wasn't something that I thought I personally could practically immediately make an impact on the world. So my experience at the White House was one of those experiences in public service, as well as my experience working with the Bhutanese refugees, which led me to the White House. Was one of those experiences that showed me that I was more about helping people. I realized that I am one of the 7 billion and growing population on this planet. I questioned during my college years what it was about my existence that I needed to do to make an impact on this world. And I realized that I was a very small percentage of that larger population, but I also realized that if I'm going to live on this earth for a certain amount of time, that I need to be impactful and helpful. So that led me to the social work that I do now, which is centered around my faith as a Hindu. I try to invoke certain principles in my way of life that I was brought up to try to practically solve the issues of today.
Before we go on further with this, just that you mentioned it about the faith and Hinduism, I know that most Americans do not know what it is. I once had a neighbor, my current neighbor actually, who asked me if Hinduism was part of Islam and whether we were Muslims.
Right.
So it is to that extent. So can you tell the difference between Hinduism and these other religions?
Sure. Hinduism always seems to get pushed into the Abrahamic faiths. The Abrahamic faiths, which are Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, have one prophet and one book that they follow. Hinduism, unlike the Abrahamic faiths, is more focused on a holistic way of life. It is actually the only ancient religion that is still alive.
In
existence, with 1 billion plus followers. Hinduism is anything you want it to be. Actually, Hinduism was a name given by external rulers because
when they were referring to the people that lived across the Indus River.
The Indus River, that's right. But the real name for Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma, which means the universal duty. So whatever that universal duty it is that you have as a human being is Hinduism. So whether it means yoga, to realizing that duty through yoga, through meditation, through devotion, through knowledge, through philosophical discussion, whatever that may be, that really is Hinduism. And you see it manifest in different ways in the West. For example, you can refer to the Beatles, who were the disciples of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. You have Paramahamsa Yogananda, who came to the West to spread Kriya Yoga, and there are many disciples of his in the West. So Hinduism is really about if I were to say it in my own practice, it's about the integration of the body, the mind, and the spirit with the nature around you, and how you must first inquire into yourself, discover yourself, and by doing that, by becoming self-realized, you can then realize what is around you, and you're part, and you're a holistic part of this existence, this whole universe.
To me, it's surprising to find an engineering student just change, make an about turn, a 360-degree whatever, or a 180-degree turn, right, and get into this kind of a spirituality and this kind of a social kind of awareness. Generally, only social science students and humanities students are supposed to have that kind of feeling and that kind of an attraction to the subject.
Right.
Generally, the scientific engineering communities have stayed away from these practices.
That's right.
So this kind of a light bulb moment came to you when you were doing this internship at the White House.
That's right.
And now today you have your own organization.
Right.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah.
It's a Dharmic coalition.
Yeah. It's so it's interesting how I brought my principles to apply them practically to solve today's issues. As you may know, one of the biggest issues within not just the Hindu or the Dharmic community, but a larger American community, because after all, I am an American, I've been brought up here, I'm part of this fabric of the American way of life, is feeding, is homeless hunger. So that's a big issue within our country. Over 49 million people go hungry every night. And so...
and I have brought this point in other programs that I had here before, mm-hmm, and we had some Danbury High School students, mm-hmm, bringing us some more information about how they are feeding the homeless right here in Danbury.
That's
Maybe
right.
I should put you in touch with that group too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But then the thing is, why in this country of plenty, why do we have people that are in poverty and going hungry? I mean, that seems very unjust.
It does. It's mostly because we are not aware of those kind of people, because we tend to, for example, within the Indian Hindu community, we all live in the suburbs. The community itself is well off.
Yes.
So we focus on ourselves a lot more, and we come from India, for example, where we do see that poverty, but we think when we come to America that everything is great. But when our neighbors are going hungry every night, one of the things that opened my eyes was when we started feeding the homeless in Harlem. You see that we go to a street corner in Harlem, and we set up tables and we bring the food, and even before we start setting up the tables, there's a long line, about a half a mile, that people just stand and get ready and to feed themselves. And hunger is something that is very central to all beings, not just human beings. So
actually, in India, I remember growing up there when, mm-hmm, we were young, and for the most part we tried to feed as a family. Mm-hmm. We always fed the hungry around, in, right, and around people that would be hovering around the house and hovering around in the street. Right. We'd always call them in and give them food. Right. But then I find that of late, in the last 20 years that I traveled back to India, I'm finding that's less and less.
Interesting.
I'm not seeing the people being as generous to people that do not have enough money to eat. Right. So there's a change there. Right. Although according to the Hindu philosophy, you're supposed to feed the insects, the birds, the animals, and then you're supposed to feed yourself.
That's right, because the divine is everywhere, and the concept of annadanam, which is something that I've been brought up with as a Hindu American, finally went off when it came to this putting this homeless hunger coalition
Annadanam basically translates to?
Into food donation.
Donation of food.
And that is one of the biggest charitable things that you can do, is feed another. And so I thought, well, here's a concept central and core to my way of life. how can I then take this and solve a real issue that's part of the poverty of this country.
What is the organization you've started?
So it's a Dharmic Feeding Coalition. We're a coalition of different organizations like the Satya Sai Baba group, which is part of a Hindu group. There's Muslims Against Hunger who work with us. So it's an interfaith in action coalition, really. We have the Hare Krishna Temple, which is everywhere. They donate a lot of delicious food. Just recently, we had this Hindu-American conference at the White House, and that was to celebrate Mahatma Gandhi's 145th birth anniversary.
And that was on October 22nd?
October 2nd, okay. That's right. And the whole day we spoke about service and dialogue about how we invoke our dharmic values. So then where's the action? So we then went after the conference to the largest homeless shelter in DC and set up a table again in a street corner, got the food donated to us, and started serving people.
Speaking of dharmic values that you just mentioned, I think we have to explain that to our audience.
Sure. Dharmic values, where do I start?
Dharma. Let's start with dharma, the word.
Sure. Dharma it means duty. So whatever duty is to you, whether it's the duty of being a good son, doing what your father expects of you, or being a student, being very diligent with your studies, that's your duty if that is the stage you're in life, whether it's being a good husband or father, or just being a good citizen of this planet and this universe. So the whole Hindu dharmic religion is focused around that. One of the dharmic values that I try to focus on, and that Gandhi has always focused on, is the concept of ahimsa, which means nonviolence. And nonviolence, we say, is a supreme virtue of dharma. So that is one of the values among other values. But dharmic means to invoke these values in a way that they end up in service.
How does this lead one to social justice?
It leads one to realize the issues facing, that the world is facing. It's not until we realize where we come from, who we are, what it is that our books, our scriptures, our parents have told us, our roots have really, what our roots are, that we really try to open up to the issues around us. It's not just about knowing, it's about doing. At the end of the day, we're all karmic people. We're all bound by karma in this world.
Again, karma would, I think most people know the word karma, but they may not really understand the full meaning of it.
That's right.
And that is, again, something like a consequence of what you do.
Right. Right, and karma is basically what you say comes around, what you do comes around.
What you even think,
what
they
you
say.
even think, they say, right? Because thoughts eventually transform into actions. So we're bound by karma, and so then the question becomes, how can we be good so that we do get good in at the end of the day? Swami Vivekananda, one of the greatest saints or sages that came from India in 1893 and addressed the Parliament of World Religions, who took him, very, very nicely in this country, said, "We don't do this to save the world. The world doesn't need saving in any way. The world knows how to fix itself. The world knows how to heal itself. The planet does, the universe does. But we do this to help ourselves at the end of the day. We do service for our own karmic, our own goodness, our own good feeling, that we are part of this existence and we are trying to do something good, for that feeling of bliss and peace of mind that we all try to find in this day and age."
Tell us a little bit about your very recent White House trip.
Sure.
How long were you there? What exactly was discussed?
Sure.
And what fun thing happened there?
Sure. So this Hindu-American Seva conference was something I and my boss at the Office of Public Engagement started during my year as an intern. So this is the first time ever that the Hindu Americans in this country congregated in one location to voice their opinion, to say that we are part and fabric of this nation. And so that conference that started during my year as an intern this was its 4th year in conference.
Oh,
and
very
so,
good.
Yeah, so it's continuing, and we hope that it
Every
continues
year.
through future administrations.
Who are the people attending it?
Sure. You know, every year we have different people. Last year we had Senator Harris Wofford, who was actually the one that started Peace Corps, AmeriCorps. He's a big public servant. He actually saw Gandhi at the age of 12. And was impacted by Gandhi and King. There were many people. Recently we had Nisha Desai Baswal, who's the Assistant Secretary of State for Southeast Asian Affairs at the Department of State, come and talk about service and what that meant to her. We had Senator Harris Wofford again. We honored him with a shawl, you know, showing our gratitude for inspiring us all to do service. So he spoke about his interaction with Gandhi at a tender age of 12. We had Asim Mishra, who was part of the Corporation for National Community Service, which does a lot of good work around the country.
I see.
We had my former boss, Paul Montero, who spoke about service. He now is the director of AmeriCorps.
I see.
And then we had community leaders like myself and others who came to talk about issues that are close and dear to our community as a Hindu American community, the dialogue within our community.
I think that is very important, because I find a lot of the Hindu American youngsters, and even the first generation people that came here, they've kind of assimilated into this country so much that they've kind of forgotten the roots and forgotten the good values that came with those roots. And I think and these children, I think in the next generation, would get totally lost and not really have a good identity unless they get into one of these dialogues and get to understand what these things are about and learn from that. And once they are sure about who they are, where they come from really, and what they can contribute toward making this a great nation. I think, and that's, I think, very important, and that's a great dialogue to have.
Absolutely. I think that our parents, my parents who've immigrated here, have been steeped in dharmic values in Hinduism. So it's like, you know, for the most part, it's been okay, we'll just follow along what the traditions say. But I think we have a real opportunity here in this country. For example, in this country, we don't take anything for face value. We take everything, we question everything intellectually. Why is it this way? Why is it that way? Why do we do this prayer this way? Why do we say that? Why do we chant this? So I think we have a real opportunity here to really come back to our culture in the most untainted way, and really look to the scholarly aspects of it and find out what it is that we are.
You have also started another organization that's Dharmic Dialogues, and that's exactly for this. To get the young people to engage in conversations about this and following a dharmic way of life and contributing to society. We did not show the pictures. You want to quickly call in the pictures of the homeless feeding? Can she put it in? Just one photo will do. That was behind the White House, right? At the homeless shelter?
That was actually behind the largest homeless shelter in D.C.
Oh, behind the homeless shelter.
And it's very close to the White House, only about a mile away, or several. And you know, we just had the Hare Krishna's temple.
The next picture, can you
donate? You know, food. This is our small group of youth who were there. Anju Bhargava, the one all the way to the right, she was the first dharmic representative on President Obama's Faith Council.
I see.
When President Obama was first elected.
Okay, and another picture? Okay, and this is another one of the feeding the homeless.
That's right, and we served over 300 meals that day to the homeless. Just as we were setting up, there was a long line. Just gives you the reality of how many people.
Do you want to
are going hungry.
pull in the picture of Ganesh now? Or?
Sure, we can then go on to the Lakshmi Cow Sanctuary.
We don't have time for that. We will have to do that in the next show.
Sure.
But this Ganesh is...
But this is from the Lakshmi Cow Sanctuary.
Okay.
And we will talk about that next.
That is
Great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, we had 2 minutes. So if you want to kind of put some kind of a finishing touch to what we were discussing, I want some good snippets from your White House experience.
Sure. What can I say?
You met the president, got to shake his hand?
Well, this was back when I was an intern.
I see.
There was an opportunity for that. He also spoke with us, the intern group, 120 of us. And one of the things he told us, he spent about 20 minutes with us. He said, no matter what you do in life or what kind of a job you have, he said, never forget your family and never have a long commute. That's one of the things he said.
I think that's a good advice.
He said, do not have a long commute because while you do work, family is extremely important because you're responsible for 3 other people and impacting their lives. And so it's extremely important that you have strong family values. And that's something that stuck with me since the president said it. I can remember standing there in the Rose Garden listening to him. And he said, do not have a long commute, but remember that just working for a dime or a dollar is a lack of ambition. It's a poverty of ambition in this country. It's fight for something that's valuable in life, meaningful and impactful. So
I think that's wonderful advice.
Yeah.
And a lot of adults here can follow that and learn from that. Thank you very much, Sai.
You got it. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Sai Santosh Kumar Kolluru, who was a White House intern, and he's also very, very active in social work and social justice in feeding the homeless and the hungry. So please, again, tune in next week because we are going to continue talking about how to live a holistic living and also do some selfless service for the society. Thank you all for watching.